Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. OP14 has finally cemented itself here in the West as, well, one of the best and most diverse metas we have seen in a long time. Today, I'm here to talk about said meta, how it's changed since OP13, some decks that you should actually keep an eye out for, as well as how it's actually different in comparison to the East. Let's get some obvious things out of the way first. Despite the meta being still very high power, it has been significantly widened, with multiple decks from all sets getting support from OP14 and EBO4. So it means that despite decks like Red, Blue, Ace and Emil still being the top dogs of the format as they have been for a while, decks that have received support in the latest set have made it so that both decks have more stringent weaknesses and can have them exploited very easily. However, Ace and Emu are the top dogs in the format for a reason. Both decks are still incredibly strong and in borderline broken in some cases if you hit the fucking nuts. However, all of the OP14 decks other than one have been very much playable in the competitive format and are really good picks. Blue Yellow Boa, Purple Doflamingo, Blue Jinbei, Green Mihawk, and Black Yellow Moria are the new toys to play with from the set, and their tools are definitely nothing to turn your nose up at, especially Boa and Mihawk, the two decks of OP14 that seem to have taken center stage when it comes to shaking up the meta. Shake up the meta they have done, because now the triangle format of OP13 between Ace, Emu, and Zoro is completely gone, with Zoro pretty much being absent from the format here in the West for a multitude of reasons, which I will get onto in just a moment. Let's talk about the two leaders that have actually made their way into the meta very forcefully: Blue Yellow Boa and Green Mihawk. Boa is definitely something to behold. It is one of the strongest decks in the current meta and is honestly on track to be one of the strongest, if not the strongest, alongside Ace due to its very punishing way of playing, specifically for your opponent. Boa has two effects. On your opponent's turn, if you would play a character this turn, you draw a card, so essentially you go positive in most, if not all, instances. And Don times one, once per turn, when your Amazon Lily or Kucha Pirate type characters would be KO'd with 5,000 or more power, your opponent takes one life from the top of their life pile to their hand. Being able to essentially keep your hand stocked up on both turns if you happen to play a character out of life, which you will be doing a lot, as well as punishing your opponent for swinging into your board to try and relieve some of the pressure. Boa's characters from OP14 and before have amazing synergy. It has a searchable Kuma with Sengoku, as well as being able to buff all the characters with Gorgon Sisters, as well as having access to blue. So Pudding and Red Rock are very good cards before the latter rotates. And not to mention, the deck has its own copy of 10 cost Lin with a trigger in the form of 9 cost Boa, which can also actually be played in Gecko Moria as it's only locked to leaders with 7 Warlords of the Sea in their types. The results for this deck are absolutely stacked, winning tournament after tournament just because of how strong the deck is as a whole and having such strong synergy with its current wave of support and previous cards. The deck will continue to pop off and will likely pop off even more in EBO3 with the release of 5 cost Nami, which just comes in under a month as of me recording this video. Green Mihawk is the other major meta contender in OP14, and while his playstyle isn't as oppressive and as punishing as Boa's, he is still just as strong in his own right, and Jesus Christ, at times he can actually be more annoying than Boa. He also has 2 effects. If your leader has slash attribute in their type, or if your opponent's leader, should I say, it gains 1000 power during this turn, or actually at all times. Activate main, and once per turn, you may rest one of your cards, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a Don. If there is a character with a cost of 5 or more on the field, you may set up to 3 Don as active, and you cannot play characters for the rest of the turn. Already being a 6k leader against most slash attribute leaders is absurd, which means they have to attach 1 Don every single time to try and hit leader, which sometimes is really hard, especially with the cards I'm going to talk about in a little bit. This only matters if you're not playing the mirror, because obviously your opponent will also have 6,000 power, so it's not necessarily the worst. Being able to get the rest effects through leader effects and be able to recycle your Don for higher swings is absolutely absurd. With his 2 signature cards, 9 cost Mihawk and 7 cost Shanks, both being searchable off of Perona, as well as having some of the strongest effects in the entire game. 9 cost Mihawk being able to essentially prevent nearly everything from resting, making sure you can't attack, block, or rest to activate their effect, which grinds the game to a fucking halt, as well as being able to cycle any brick out of your hand into a 2k counter. 7 cost Shanks is essentially the really big part of the deck. It can rest anything with 7,000 or less base power, and when it becomes rested, it essentially becomes a 10 cost Shanks, as well it minuses everything on your opponent's turn. Having access to some other really good cards like Coffin Boat, Dead Man's Game, as well as some more, this deck and Boa are actually likely to be the main reason that OP12 Zoro actually fell out of favor a lot in OP14. But that would be my personal assumption. If you disagree, be sure to let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys think. Just like Boa, Mihawk's results are absolutely sacked. Winning tournament after tournament just like Boa, it seems to come naturally for both of these two decks. Whilst Mihawk is less represented than Boa, he is still just as strong, and realistically, I still think he will stick around for a long time just like Boa. While the other OP14 decks are significantly less powerful in comparison to Boa and Mihawk, which means they top less, I still love them, and I'm still very much inclined to talk about them, and I will try my best to do them justice. Moria is one of the few decks that, when it comes to yellow, I can actually get behind how it plays. Instead of using its life as the main way to cheat out bodies, which it can do, it mainly uses its grave as a secondary hand, being able to use cards like Dr. Hogback and Moria to revive cards like Perona and Absalom, the former of which is actually one of the strongest yellow cards to be printed in recent memory. Realistically, the thriller cards in the set are absolutely bonkers, and, well, in their own little way, they've managed to coin a trend in other yellow decks that people are rightfully dubbing the zombie decks, essentially using their trash as a second hand. Since all the zombie engine pieces have triggers, you can search them off of Lilith, which means you can actually find the missing piece. Black Crocodile is one of the most unique decks to ever be printed in the OPTCG, as, well, he takes Black's old mechanic of reducing costs and popping characters and throws it away by preventing you from popping your opponent's characters. He essentially takes the Blackbeard route, kind of, as he uses his cards to negate, prevent characters from resting. Cards like Missile Sunday, Bond Clay, 8-cost Crocodile, and of course Ground Death. He essentially takes the Blackbeard route, where he's less focused about removing board pieces and prefers to make his opponent forcefully go negative in tempo because they're lacking the specific resource. He is definitely the big brain deck of the format, because, oh my fucking god, I can't get my head around it. He seems to top with those who know how to play him, but it's one of the decks that he's significantly less powerful than Moria, Boa, and Mihawk, but he is still oh so strong. Purple Doflamingo, like Crocodile, is also one of the most unique decks to ever be printed, because he's one of few leaders that exclusively do something on your opponent's turn, and actively wants his characters to be KO'd. So he does it himself. His leader effect is one of the main points of the deck, being able to gain incremental advantage through cards like Dellinger, Sugar, Monet, then starting to get really overpowering cards, which, with cards like Virgo, which is the deck's protection from removal, 8-cost Dolphy, as well as one of the new best purple boss monsters, 10-cost Dolphy, which for Don -3, you can pop a character with an 8-cost or less, or prevent 3 characters with 7-cost or less from resting. So like before, you can't attack, you can't block, and you can't rest to activate their effects. And it's such an oppressive card, like the 10-cost Dolphy's green counterpart before it. Jinbei is the final OP14 deck that has been making a splash in the meta, and despite him being the objectively weakest of the meta OP14 decks, it certainly does not mean he is a bad deck. Far fucking from it. Just like a lot of weenie spam decks before him, he can be just so absurdly oppressive with his tempo, being able to constantly swing 5k at you and whittle down your hand just as fast as you can draw it, which in most if not all cases with decks other than Ace is quite hard, and the advantage and the pressure starts to mount very quickly, going from 1-cost bodies that draw your card and replace themselves to Aladdin, which is a 4-cost 5k that plays another card, which then goes up into Fisher Tiger, which is a 7-cost or 6-cost 7k body, which draws you 3 fucking cards, which obviously is really strong. Mind you, you do have to discard down to 5 at the end of the every turn, but considering Jinbei's leader effect, you can sculpt your hand to whatever the fuck it needs to be. Finally, at the top, we have 8-cost Jinbei, which refills your hand, bounces any character on the field with a cost of 7 or less, you or your opponent. On top of that, also gaining Rush when you discard a card through an effect. Holy fucking shit, really eat your fucking heart out. The deck's pressure is absurd if you get the curve you need, and well, can make mincemeat of everything if your opponent just can't keep up. You do have to be mindful of 6+k leaders like Ace, Roger, and UP Luffy, but that is a small price to pay for amazing matchups into Mihawk and Emu. OP14 was an amazing set for decks that actually hit the ground running from their first wave of support, and honestly, the set just gave amazing support to other decks across its actual main set as well as EVO 4. Some decks you can actually think about playing if you don't want to play anything that's a little bit meta. Red Green Luffy is absurdly good with gaining access to Nami as well as Usopp, and finally some protection in the new Luffy card, which only gets better with the access to Robin in EBO3. Blue Kuzan, which, holy shit, that deck got some amazing support in the form of Bluegrass and Ice Time, as well as the best attacker in the deck on the odd curve being Isho. UP Sanji is also nothing to snuff at as well. Stealth Black, the Modal Searcher, as well as the indirect support through Vivu with Terracotta. The deck is able to actually tub up big Sanjis very, very quickly and get them back consistently. All we now need is EVO3 Reiji. Alongside OP14's hype, we also got the release of a new structure deck. Structure Deck 29 Egghead Luffy, a 6-life yellow leader that has some really strong cards to boot. Originally, he was not slated to be as strong as the rest of the meta. Despite what I and a couple of others have said about this deck, it turns out we were fucking right. Alongside Boa, Mihawk, Ace, and Emu, AC29 Luffy has turned out to be a very big meta contender with access to majorly good triggers like Sanji, Blocker Robin, and Night Cost Bonnie, all of which are searchable through the previously mentioned Lilith, having access to the Zombie Engine and access to Flame Dragon King, a searchable 4K counter, that allows you to rearrange your life pile. Having access to some of the strongest yellow cards alongside a bulky leader that can eventually start cycling bricks, it quickly rose up to solidify itself as one of the top dogs in the meta and, well, one of the most budget friendly too. Despite how similar the metas do look at the highest levels on both sides, there are actually some significant differences that do make our current OP14 meta significantly different to the meta they have in Japan. The biggest difference is actually Japan have had EBO3 for a long time, meaning decks previously mentioned like UP Sanji as well as UY Nami, having access to 5-cost Reiju and 5-cost Nami respectively, have been able to make a splash in the meta, and they have been doing very well. But with access to EBO3, it only makes the meta decks even stronger. Boa is just as oppressive with 5-cost Nami and 7-cost Robin, ST29 having access to both of the previously mentioned cards, as well as UP Luffy being even stronger with 7-cost Lilin and so much more. Meta decks are even stronger at the release of the set, which despite rogue decks getting stronger, the disparity between rogue and meta is still very high. The meta out here in the West is certainly a lot more fun than what it was in OP13, and I am so happy about that. One Piece is bigger than ever, for better or for worse, but with EBO3 and OP15 on the horizon, let's hope that they have something fun in store for us. That will be all from me, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your opinion down below. Make sure to keep it civil and have fun while doing it. Have a good one, stay safe, and happy playing. I'll see you guys in the next one.